Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and we have had an entire weekend now with Paradox Rift being legal, so I think it's time to look at some tournament results and see what decks are doing well in the online tourneys right now with Paradox Rift being legal. Of course, we do have LAIC coming up very, very soon, so it is important to look at the results here from the tournaments to kind of see what decks are doing good and what the play for LAIC could end up being. Of course, if y'all are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below and leave a like in the video if you go on to enjoy. We are closing in on 9,000 subscribers here on the channel, so it'd be greatly appreciated if you went ahead and subscribed. And I'm excited to get into it. We have quite a few tourneys to look at. I got 6 opened up here. So we're going to look at some tourneys and see what the best decks from Paradox Rift are. So starting things off, we do have the Redacted Paradox number 1. The winner was a Charizard deck. Now, Charizard, I think, is one of the better evolving decks right now. But we can see this list is very straightforward. It's actually basically Arvinzard with just a Jirachi added into the deck, which could be enough for the deck to actually be good against Lost Box. Obviously, Charizard's Lost Box matchup isn't terrible if you know how to play it, but Lost Box can obviously win if they get like a super quick Sableye, and Jirachi basically just fixes that, where now if your opponent flips over a Comfey, you just get a Jirachi in play as soon as possible, and then all of a sudden Sableye isn't an issue, and that actually makes it really hard for your opponent to deal with these big threats like the Charizard, even the Entei to a degree. The one thing with this list is it only plays a 1-1 Pidgeot line as opposed to 2-2. But it does kind of keep things simple with the Arvinzard. And again, Jirachi could just be enough of an upgrade to that deck. In second place, we do have a Iron Valiant Rapid Strike Urshifu deck. So Iron Valiant does have a couple ways it's seen play right now. We're actually going to look at another Iron Valiant list very soon, probably. But we do see Iron Valiant Urshifu getting second here. This deck probably is fine. I mean, I haven't played Iron Valiant yet, but I do know that the Urshifu build is fairly popular. And Urshifu does provide nice type coverage against Miraidon. It gives you Rapid Flow and Gale Thrust, which can be really good attacks to have when you are spamming Iron Valiant's ability. So this deck definitely does look to be pretty solid, and it can make a lot of crazy plays. Like some people would argue this is like Diet Rapid Strike Inteleon Urshifu, but it definitely does have some advantages, like being able to aggressively spam the ability of Iron Valiant as opposed to waiting for an Inteleon VMAX plus energy combo. So we'll have to see if Iron Valiant Urshifu is the best way to play it, because again, it's not the only Iron Valiant deck we're going to look at. We have another Charizard in top 4. This one is a Charizard. It's Arvinzard once again, actually not playing the Jirachi, so kind of just a standard Arvinzard deck from the Paradox Rift format. And in top 4, we do have the Shempao Iron Hands deck here with the Earthen Vessels, the Counter Catcher, and of course, that one of Iron Hands. It's basically like a combination of Canadian Shempao, but they've added in the Iron Hands. The only thing is now there's no Cross Switch or Cologne in the deck, but you offset that by having Iron Hands be a way that you take the 2-prize KO instead of using Radiant Greninja. So definitely a strong deck here. We'll have to see if Shempao Iron Hands keeps making waves. I think a lot of people are really hyping this deck up right now, and we'll have to see if its tournament results kind of stay the same and if it can live up to its hype. We have another Charizard deck here, but it's Radiantzard this time. It is Sablezard with a couple of tools. It does have some new cards. The first one, Jirachi, obviously going to be good against the Mirror match, against other Sableye decks, but you also get Double Counter Catcher, which is actually really good in this deck. I think Double Counter Catcher is very powerful in these Lost Zone engine decks because a lot of the time you can use the Counter Catcher alongside Sableye and Cram and take out liabilities. The deck also, of course, plays the Devolution TM. Because Sableye and Cramorant are very good against Evolution decks, you can easily just kind of set up plays where you just de-evolve everything. Like against Charizard, you can just like Sableye a bunch of things and then just de-evolve them in the later half of the game. You'd have that Radiant Charizard as a big kind of sweeper in the late game if you need that. Really good against like Miraidon stuff. Lost City isn't being played at all right now, I would say, so it really does keep this deck kind of afloat. So definitely, yeah, I think Sablezard definitely does get a bit better now with those new cards. We got a couple Mews in top 8 here. I think Mew's definitely in an okay spot. Obviously, it doesn't really gain anything with the new set, other than just maybe being better because of the amount of 2-prize EX decks that are out right now. But we'll have to see if Mew can live up to, you know, its potential when there's Roaring Moon kind of in the format, because we got another Mew in top 8. Both builds are the fusion build. 2 different builds. One was using Ice Cube. This one's playing Catcher and Meloetta. And then in top 8, we do have a Lugia deck, and it is the Lugia Iron Hands deck. I'm a huge advocate for this deck. I think this deck is actually really good. I think Lugia Iron Hands has a lot of potential. I've tried my list. I like having like the Charizard and the Iron Hands and the Snorlax. This list is kind of similar to what I've been tweaking with. I do play a bit of a heavier line of Lugia, but the list itself is very clean. I do think that Iron Hands Lugia is a legit deck. I don't think this deck is bad at all, because you can play Earthen Vessel, but Earthen Vessel also gives you more Archeops fodder. And it also gives you the ability to use basic energy with the Iron Hands and the Radiant Charizard. One of the things I like about this deck is Radiant Charizard. Radiant Charizard with Fire Energy is really good because now you can attack with Charizard earlier on in the game, which can be really helpful. Not to mention, you can play Thornton. This list doesn't play Thornton. I like using Thornton in this deck. I think Thornton's really good in here. One Iron Hands, one Thornton, one Charizard is usually my way to go, but this list does have basically the same concept. And I think that Lugia Iron Hands is a deck that you should probably respect because I think that actually is pretty good. We do have a Roaring Moon outside of the top 8 here I wanted to look at real quick. It is using a 1/1 Darkrai, but it is very turbo. It is playing Pokestop and Cross Receiver. Cross Receiver does get you back potentially like a supporter or a Pokemon, and it does play 4 Seda, 1 Boss, 1 Judge. So not really playing that many supporters, really just playing the Sedas. I mean, the Judge and the Boss are in there, but for the most part, you're relying on those Cross Receivers to let you spam Seda every turn. You do have the Cross Switcher, so you don't really need to play, that much Gust because you already have the Cross Switcher, Pokestop combo in the deck. Yeah, I kind of like this list. Pretty clean, very turbo, very straightforward. I think Darkrai V-Star is something that people could start trying out in their Roaring Moon decks. I think it isn't a bad addition. And then we have a Serena EX deck, here. Now, I am a huge fan of Serena EX. I played it on my stream last night, and I ended up actually doing pretty good. I think the deck's actually kind of underrated. This build is not using Bibarel or anything. It is playing a Mew and Braviary, and some draw. Yeah, Serena, I think, is a really cool card. I think has tons of potential in the format. I think it actually is just that good if it can set up. Obviously, these like big 1-KO decks are a little scary, but I do think that Serena is a pretty good card that if your opponent doesn't know how to play against it, I think you can actually make a lot of really cool plays with it when you can kind of lock everything in on the board with its first attack and then kind of win with a Braviary taking 3 prizes. Because I won literally my first game with Serena EX that I played last night on stream. I quite literally won the game. The first game, I literally took all 6 prizes in 1 turn with Braviary. So this deck actually seems good, and I think Serena EX could be looked at a little bit more. And I'll look at all the 6-2 decks, I guess, because 6-2 is like kind of on the bubble. We do have a Lost Tina deck here outside of top 8. I think Lost Tina is one of the better Lost Zone decks right now because it doesn't really, rely heavily on like these low HP basics as much as like Turbo. And Giratina is a really good card. This build doesn't have any new cards, though. Don't see any counter catchers or anything, but I mean, Tina sometimes just kind of does what it does. We got another Charizard deck here, but it is Charizard EX Lost Zone. So it's not Sablezard, it's Charizard Lost Zone. With, once again, not playing any new cards. No counter catcher, no Jirachi or anything, which is quite interesting. And then we got another Urshifu Iron Valiant deck here at the 6-2 record. Again, we'll have to see if this is the optimal way to play Iron Valiant. The thing with Iron Valiant is that there are many ways to play it. I think there's even more ways to play it that we haven't even discovered yet. I think the card is just that good, and I think that this Urshifu build is maybe just touching the surface of what Iron Valiant can really do. We do have an other deck here, which was okay, it was another Roaring Moon. This one is another or is it a Roaring Moon deck? It's like a Roaring Moon Mew EX deck. All right, this is an interesting archetype. Okay, this is interesting. Huh. This went 6-2, so I actually did decent. I mean, it's a turbo deck. It's playing Peony, but it's using Mew, because I guess you can use Mew with Peony, right? Because Mew can draw you 3 cards. That's interesting. Okay, this is a very interesting list, actually. Huh. All right, well. All right, moving on, we got the next tournament. We got the Battle Park tournament here, and the winner of the tournament looks like it was a Lost Zone Charizard Moltres deck. I'm a fan of Moltres in Lost Box. I think it's a cool combo to have in the deck because you can actually use it with Clara, but this build is another Sablezard deck with a few extra cards like the Moltres. It's got the Jirachi again, the counter catchers. Not playing the Devolution TM, however. It's actually only playing 1 Sableye too. So it tries to really hone in on like Cramorant and Moltres and stuff. The 1 Sableye is interesting, but it does have Mew EX, but you can't even attack with it. Well, no, there's Mirage Gate. I guess you can use Mew. I guess it's kind of just like you pick and choose what attack you want to use. It is an interesting deck. It did win the entire tournament, so there is something to it. For sure. I like both Moltres and Charizard kind of do similar things. They both do a lot of damage in the late game, and they both synergize really nicely with Clara. We do see an Entei Iron Valiant deck here in second place. Now, this is a very interesting deck. I actually played against something similar in a YouTube video. I forget what YouTube video. I think it might have been the Roaring Moon video I did. or maybe it was the Garchomp video. I can't remember, but I know I did play against an Entei Iron Valiant deck in a video recently, and this deck actually gave me, a bit of a challenge. I think this is an interesting archetype. You can obviously fill your bench up with Iron Valiants, and you can spam the ability, which can help you fix the math for burning Rondo. You have that Radiant Charizard in the deck as a big late game attacker, which can do extra damage thanks to Iron Valiant's own ability. So I definitely like the idea of a deck like this. This is definitely an interesting concept for an Iron Valiant deck for sure. We got 2 Lost Tinas in top 8 here. One of them is playing a Leafeon V in the deck, which is interesting. No other Grass Attacker. And then the other Lost Tina deck here we see does play a couple Counter Catcher, which feels like maybe the only new card Giratina plays, other than if you want to maybe tech a Jirachi in the deck for like a mirror match type of situation. But the Counter Catcher is nice. Counter Catcher Giratina is a combo that I think is very, very powerful. And is one of the things I think keeps Giratina afloat is maybe like the ability to spam the Counter Catcher. We got another Lost Zone Sablezard deck here. This one looks similar to the one we looked at earlier with the Devolution TM, the Counter Catchers, the Charizard. So yeah, 2 different Sable Radiant Charizard decks in top 8 in this tournament. That's very interesting. We do see another Roaring Moon deck in top 8 here. Yeah, another build here, a bit more turbo with the Pokestops. Playing a couple other stadiums like Town Store, which can be good with Forest Seal Stone and Ancient Booster Capsule. It's got the Clap Stadium, which can also be good to get rid of liabilities. I feel like, though, with Roaring Moon, you always have a liability in place. I feel like the Clap Stadium doesn't really do as much as you might think, because you're always going to have a 2-prizer in play no matter what, I think. But I do think Roaring Moon definitely has potential, and we're hopefully going to see more looking into this video, because I do think Roaring Moon definitely is going to be good. And we see another build here of the deck getting top 8. And we see a Guardian top 8 too. Guardy still clinging on for dear life. This build is playing a Screamtail and double Counter Catcher and 2 Evolution TMs. Actually playing just Arven and Iono for supporters, not playing Worker, Research, or Boss or anything, which is very interesting. But I guess when you have like the combination of like Screamtail and Cresselia, you can kind of just control your opponent's board pretty easily, and then you still obviously have the ability to use like Gardevoir. It's not playing Refinement, or it's not playing Mirage Step, I mean. It does have the Evolution TM, which I guess is basically the same thing as playing the Mirage Step Curlia, so that's interesting. And we got another Roaring Moon in top 8. This one does play the Water Energy Greninja package, which is interesting. I've played against this, and it is kind of annoying when your opponent can like threaten a Greninja. Like when you're playing against Roaring Moon, your thought is to not bench Manaphy, right? It's to kind of make sure you're able to keep up in the map race with the Roaring Moon. But when they're threatening you with a Radiant Greninja attack, it's kind of annoying. But it definitely is an interesting concept. This build, once again, going all gas. It's got the Pokestops, the heavy items with the Energy Switch, Cross Switchers, Vessels, Tricking Shoes. Just go in hot, run in hot, and trying to just run the opponent over as fast as possible with that deck. Moving on, we got the Card Cavern tournament. Shout out to Card Cavern. Once again, you get any codes over there, use code F. We got the deck that won the tournament being a Mew deck. It was Fusion Mew. Fusion Mew, again, doesn't really gain any new cards, but it maybe just gains good matchups against these, bigger EX decks, like the Roaring Moons, the Miraidons, the Shenpaos. Mew does feel like it just kind of easily farms those, and we do see this Fusion Mew deck doing pretty good in the tournament by winning it. So Fusion Mew definitely still alive. I mean, nobody's playing Spiritomb either. That's the other thing. We got another Iron Hands Shenpao at 2nd place here. Yeah, I think it's like the build we looked at earlier. It's not playing the Cross Switcher, but it does have the Counter Catcher, the Earthen Vessels, the energy for the Iron Hands. And yeah, Iron Shenpao definitely looks pretty good. I think this deck has potential, and we're seeing it do well here in this tournament. And that's the second Iron Hand Shenpao deck we've seen. Got a Roaring Moon deck too in top 4 here. Another kind of, bit of a turbo-y build. It's got the Pokestops, Town Store. It's got the Cross Switchers. That's the big thing, is Roaring Moon with Cross Switcher does seem to be a pretty powerful concept, because I didn't try it originally, but I think that Roaring Moon with the Counter Catchers might actually be better than we maybe give it credit for. And we do see a couple of these Roaring Moon Cross Switcher builds getting top 8, so we got another Roaring Moon deck here in the top 8 of this tournament. Now, interesting enough, we got a Snorlax Stall deck here, also in top 8. Now, this is kind of interesting. Snorlax Stall does gain a pretty big advantage now that we have Counter Catcher. Counter Catcher is a really good card to play in Snorlax Stall. This deck actually plays a lot of Gust. It has Boss, Erica, which also can kind of use, obviously, as a Gust. It is a bit different, obviously, but it plays a lot of Gust with the Counter Catchers, the Boss, and the Ericas. But I do think that Snorlax Control is definitely in an interesting spot right now. Spoiler alert, this isn't the last time we're going to see Snorlax Control, I think, in this video. But I do think that Snorlax Stall is an interesting archetype right now. It's better now that we have Counter Catcher. And I feel like the way the meta is kind of warping, it's maybe better for Snorlax, right? If your opponent if they're benching these liabilities like the Greninjas and stuff, and whatever, you can just kind of easily use the Snorlax to just kind of win games. So I think Snorlax definitely is in a pretty interesting spot. And we'll have to see if more of these decks are doing well, or if maybe just if it's a best of one online tourney type thing. And maybe people just don't really know how to play against Snorlax that well, in my opinion. But it is interesting nonetheless. Another Guardian top 8 here. This one also playing the Screamtail. A bit more of a checked out list. It is playing Screamtail, but it does not play the Evolution TMs, but it does play Countercatcher. Plays an Avery. I guess Avery Screamtail could be good. I mean, the interesting about this Guardian list, though, it doesn't play Cresselia, so it did kind of swap Crest for the Screamtail, which is an interesting swap for sure. But yeah, Screamtail definitely looks to be like kind of a staple in Guardy now. We'll have to see if it keeps it up. We got another Sablezard deck here in top 8. This one, again, playing the Countercatcher and the Devolution Technical Machine. It also plays Articuno, which is good for Cramorant to do 120 damage. But yeah, definitely an interesting list once again. Sablezard's making a comeback, man. We've seen a lot of those. We've seen more Sablezard than we have, like, Turbo Lost Box or anything. Like, as point in this video, but still. We got another Tina in top 8. Once again, playing Countercatcher. Doesn't really gain any new cards other than the Countercatcher, which can be enough of an upgrade for Lost Tina to do well again. So definitely cool to still see Lost Tina, I guess, holding on. Because it does seem like it's one of the better Lost Zone decks. And in top 8, we got a Rapid Strike deck. Now, Rapid Strike obviously is getting a little overshadowed right now by Iron Valiant, but there are some benefits to playing Rapid Strike over Iron Valiant. For starters, Rapid Strike has bigger Pokemon than like 220 HP basics that are, kind of easy to KO. And Iron Valiant, you don't really ever attack with a lot of the time. If you're playing the Urshifu build, it's literally just there for its ability and not for its own attack. Whereas Rapid Strike, Inteleon Urshifu allows you to kind of use both of them. The downside of this deck, I feel like this deck has a really bad Roaring Moon matchup because, Roaring Moon just kind of farms these 3-prize Pokemon, so I definitely think Rapid Strike is still fine for now, but with, like, the decline of Lost Box and stuff, we'll have to see where it goes, but it does feel like it does have more advantages over playing Iron Valiant. We'll have to see. We do have the Hoarders Tournament, and like I said, this wasn't the last we were going to see a Snorlax, because the deck that won the tournament was literally a Snorlax control deck. Yes, Snorlax Control won in online tournament. Now, keep in mind, Snorlax Control, it's a very strong deck right now. It's very good. Potentially good, but it's good in these best-of-1 online tourneys, and I don't know how good this deck is outside of that. Obviously, the other thing, too, is this is a deck that nobody really plays against. I think a lot of the wins Snorlax Control can honestly get. If you are somebody who plays it, a lot of wins you might have is just because people don't know what they're doing when they're playing against it. I think that's ultimately this deck's big advantage is people might not know how to play against it that well, but it is good, again, being able to stall up those Pokemon that don't do anything, like those Radiant Greninjas that are seeing a lot of play right now, definitely has merit. And if it won an online tourney, the deck obviously has legs. This is the second Snorlax Control now we've seen it in these online tourneys get top 8, and it won one. So winning a tournament is definitely an impressive feat, and I think that we're definitely going to see more Snorlax Control. Actually, the person who won it, Bryson Hunt, is a local of mine, so good player, winning with a deck that does obviously require a lot of skill. We do see here a Colorless Lugia. So Colorless Lugia is still kind of holding on. It's not using the Iron Hands, not playing the Vessels, just a very straightforward Colorless build, but Colorless does still have stuff going on. Again, it does still have the Snorlaxes, which are good, and the Weirder V is also still pretty good in the deck. Weirder still is a very powerful card to have in the Lugia. We got a couple Charizards here in top 8. One of them here does play Turo Scenario, really being the only new card. I guess swapping the Penny out for the Turo, which is maybe a better upgrade over the Penny. But yeah, other new upgrade is obviously the Jirachi, which you're probably going to want to play because of Lost Box. Yet another Charizard in top 8 here. This one is not playing any... it's playing a Countercatcher. Yeah, it's playing Countercatcher, but that's about it for new cards. But, again, Charizard's new cards. Yeah, Countercatcher, you got Jirachi, and then maybe, like, one of the TMs or whatever, you know what I mean? But yeah, Charizard's still doing decent in this meta. We see our first Miraidon deck here doing well. It is Miraidon Iron Hands. So, first time we've looked at a Miraidon deck in today's video, which you would think there would be more, considering Miraidon is super popular and just won a regionals. But Miraidon is definitely still a good deck. I don't know if people are just not playing it or not, because I think the deck is still good right now. Iron Hands just makes the deck even stronger. And on top of that, Miraidon is still just a very strong deck, because turn 1 attacks are very powerful, and you can also donk stuff. You have the Judge Path combo, which I think Judge Path is also kind of underrated right now. So it is surprising to see Miraidon. It's the first time we're looking at it, but Miraidon Iron Hands definitely has potential. And we got another, of course, Iron Hands deck here in top 8. So a lot of Iron Hands decks we've been seeing in this video. Another Sableye Radiant Charizard deck, and this one is also playing the Galarian Moltres in the deck and plays Pokestops and Mirage Gauge. So very interesting, a build of Lost Box. We'll have to see. We'll have to see if these Moltres are really good for. I'm not sold on Moltres because, like, I guess Mew is still popular right now, and then also there's Gardevoir, but I don't know, man. I'm like, kind of torn on whether or not that's good. I don't know. Not too sure. But it is interesting. I'm a fan of Galarian Moltres. It's one of my favorite cards, so it's cool to see this like deck do well. There is actually a Goldengo in top 8 here. That's kind of cool. Goldengo with Scyther and Scizor. Not really playing any like draw engine per se. It's just playing the Goldengos with the Scizor, and not playing any like Kirlias or Bibrels or anything. Just opting for Goldengo's own ability plus Radiant Greninja. And the draw you have. Just play that Technical Machine Evolution, which can be good. You can get a bunch of your Goldengos in play in a single turn, which can obviously set you up for the following turn. And we got another Roaring Moon deck here in top 8. Interesting enough. Yeah, another Roaring Moon. Playing the Darkrai V-Star once again. Also playing the Water Energy Switch combo for the Radiant Greninja, which definitely could be interesting. I mean, in an open decklist tournament, it might be easier to play against, but in closed decklist, that definitely is very interesting. So it's a cool concept. But yeah, we'll see how much more Roaring Moon there is. Funny enough, there's another Snorlax here outside of top 8, but it didn't have enough points to make top 8. But it is funny. Snorlax is on that come up. We got the Tournament of Doom now, and the winner once again was another Fusion Mew. Yo, who's letting Fusion Mew win all these tournaments? Holy moly! Yeah, Fusion Mew winning another online tourney. What else is new? Yeah, Fusion Mew just I guess it's still good. Playing catchers in the deck, so very aggressive build of this deck. We got Lost Tina here in second place to look at. Again, really the only new addition is the counter catcher. It's just kind of your standard Lost Tina deck with the double counter catcher, which can be very good in the deck. And then we got another Roaring Moon here in top 4. Once again, playing the Water Energy Greninja package with Energy Switch, but is playing a very turbo build, just using Seda and Boss as your supporters, but playing the cross switchers, the shoes, and the Earthen Vessels, Pokestop engine. So a lot of turbo, a lot of gas, not a whole lot of draw supporters in the deck, but it's definitely an interesting build nonetheless of Roaring Moon. We got another Charizard deck here, another Sable High Cramzard. Kind of looks like the build we saw from, I think it was Sacramento. This build does have some new cards. It is playing Counter Catcher. It is also playing Technical Machine Devolution. But it's still kind of keeping to what it usually had. It has the Pidgeot, the Force Seal Stones, the Articuno, the Ditto. Playing Beach Court and Path Split is interesting. Path is something we did see originally in like the Sableye Cramzard decks back in the day when that deck was really new, when Lost Origins first came out. And now we're seeing the deck, once again, play Path. So that's interesting. I mean, Path is just a good card, right? So it makes sense. We do see Iron Valiant top 8. Now, this is where things get spicy. So, we've seen the Iron Valiant Urshifu deck, but then we're seeing this Iron Valiant Jolteon deck also get top 8 in an online tourney. Now, this is a very interesting build of the deck. Instead of playing the Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX, you have Jolteon VMAX, which can do, obviously, the 100-100 to a Pokemon damage on it. Now, Manaphy is obviously something you don't really have to worry about when you're playing Iron Valiant, because you can literally just knock Manaphy out with your own ability with Tachyon Bits. And then, of course, when you get rid of Manaphy, Jolteon becomes quite a powerhouse of an attacker. 100-100 is very good. It does also play Basculin in the deck, which does a bunch of damage if the Pokemon has, for each damage counter already on the Pokemon. So it's a great way to kind of clean stuff up, especially when you're setting up damage with Jolteon and with Tachyon Bits. This is a very cool build of Iron Valiant. We'll have to see if this Jolteon build is the best way to play it. I think there is potential to this build over the Urshifu build. It is a really cool build, and I like seeing the creativity. And Jolteon being back in the meta is kind of cool. It's a card that we haven't seen be good in quite a while. Another Roaring Moon in top 8. Another super turbo heavy build here with the Pokestops and all the items, but also playing the Water Energy with the Radiant Greninja. Is this the best way to play it? Maybe. Because we got another Roaring Moon deck in top 8. This one is a bit different. There's more going on. There's not as many items with the Pokestop, but it is playing a Bibarel engine. Roaring Moon can, be susceptible to those Ionos, so maybe having the Bibarel can make a difference within the deck, because it keeps you a little more Iono-proof, which can be nice, and it kind of keeps you in the game. Also, drawing more cards is always good. It's also still playing Cross Switcher in the deck, so Cross Switcher still looking to be a pretty good card to have in Roaring Moon, so there is that. And we got a Lost Tina in top 8 also here. Not playing any new cards, no counter catchers or anything, just a very straightforward Lost Tina deck. So there you go. Those are all those. I guess outside the top 8, there is a Lugia deck here. It is another Lugia Iron Hands deck. Again, Lugia Iron Hands is definitely looking like it could be a promising play in our format right now. I mean, we've only looked at 2 so far. This one did bubble out of top 8, but it is still a deck that I think should be kind of looked at and, tweaked with, because I think it's good. We got another Shempao outside top 8 here. These are the 2 decks that bubbled. There's 2 Iron Hands decks bubbling out of top 8. The Shempao Iron Hands bubbling out of top 8. And then, of course, Lugia Iron Hands bubbling outside of the top 8. So there you go. And then finally, we got the next tournament we're going to look at is the Kitchen Showdown tournament here. Now, this was the first Paradox Rift legal tournament we had. And the deck that won was Lugia, but it was a Lugia Iron Hands deck. So this deck, again, it won the first Paradox Rift tournament. Now, obviously, this deck could have won maybe because it was kind of Lugia, everyone knew how to play it or whatever. But the fact that it still won a tournament, I think is still very good for this deck. Because again, I think this deck is still good right now, and I think should be looked at more because I think that Lugia Iron Hands is a legit decent archetype. Interesting to take away with this list. It is playing only 2 Research and 2 Ionos, so not as much draw. It does still have the fish. It's got the gift energies. It's got, Drapion and Pumpkaboo and Iron Hands. Like, usual stuff you'll see, but the less draw is interesting, for sure. And the 3-3 Lugia is also fine. I mean, some lists are playing 3-3. 4-3, in my opinion, is still good. There's no Dunsparce in the deck. That's maybe one card I would also maybe consider playing in Lugia Iron Hands is that Dunsparce. Just to help, like, literally, I mean, probably against Iron Hands itself and Miraidon, obviously, being another big one. But yeah, cool to see this deck win. I'm kind of a believer in Lugia Iron Hands, so there you go. We got another Lugia in second. This one is not the Iron Hands build. It is just a colorless Lugia deck here, just kind of coming over from the last format. Really nothing new added to the deck, but I think colorless Lugia is still fine in this format. I mean, it kind of does everything that it always did. It doesn't really gain any new or bad matchups, other than maybe the Iron Hands, but you probably have to play the Dunsparce, and maybe that becomes fixed. We got another Fusion Mew in top 8. Fusion Mew, once again, doing really well right now in this online tourney scene. This one also playing the very heavy catcher-aggressive build. There you go. Another Roaring Moon here, top 4 Roaring Moon. The first well-performing Roaring Moon deck, technically, of this format. Did get top 4, and it's playing Cross Switcher. Yeah, looks like Cross Switcher is going to be a staple in Roaring Moon, because I think every Roaring Moon deck we've looked at has been playing Cross Switcher. We got an Entei deck here in top 8. Now, funny enough, it's not Entei Iron Valiant, it's Entei with Pogo Moltres. That's very interesting. It also doesn't have any new cards from Paradox in it, so I don't know. This is interesting. The fact that this deck got top 8, I mean, I don't know what to really take away with it, obviously, but I mean, hey, it's cool, I guess. Another Guardian top 8 here. This one is playing the Evolution TM. However, it is not playing Screamtail. It does have Evolution TM and Counter Catcher. It's actually playing quite a lot of Gust. I mean, it's got double Boss, double Counter Catcher, but playing the Evolution TM over the Mirage Step Kirlia, because Evolution TM kind of does something similar. It's not playing any Arvins, though, but it does have to kind of play a heavier count of the Evolution TM, which does kind of mean that, in the later part of the game, they're going to be dead cards. You're going to have to refinement them away and whatnot. But yeah, it looks like Guardy still is fine. I mean, we've already seen a couple Guardies in these top 8, so like Guardy's still holding on in this meta. It's not dead or anything. And we got another Roaring Moon in top 8. This one is pretty much just all turbo too. Playing a lot more items with the Pokestops. Playing 12 energy, wow. Playing 4 Sata and the 1 Iono. So yeah, there you go. Roaring Moon, just turbo Roaring Moon. And we got another Guardian top 8. This one is not also playing Screamtail. It's also not playing the Evolution TM. The only new card it's actually playing is that one of Counter Catcher, which is a good card to have in the deck, but it's still playing Mirage Step, kind of just like a Guardy list from the past format. Just adding a Counter Catcher to the deck over playing Screamtail. And there you have it. That is the online tourneys to look at here, looking at all these decks that got top 8. So things to take away, we did see that Snorlax Control is starting to make a move in the format. It did win an online tournament, which is very big. We are seeing Lugia do well with Iron Hands. We're seeing Mew dominate. Mew won a few of these online tourneys, which is crazy. So Mew's definitely still chilling in the meta right now. We see Roaring Moon's doing pretty decent. We haven't seen a tournament where Roaring Moon's won yet. Not in this anyways. None of these tournaments were won by Roaring Moon. So Roaring Moon does seem to be a strong deck, but it hasn't won an online tourney. But it has been getting decent top 8 placements. We saw a couple cool builds of Iron Valiant with Jolteon and Urshifu. Sablezard, like with the Radiant Charizard, is doing really well right now. It's actually the best performing Lost Box deck over Turbo Lost Box, which is also kind of crazy to think about. So a lot of cool things to take away from these early online tourneys. Again, it's really just the first weekend of Paradox Rift being legal. So kind of take everything here maybe with a grain of salt going into LEIC, or if you're testing for LEIC and want to play any of these decks. Some cool takeaways for sure. And we'll have to see in the next video what the online meta is going to look like, because I'm sure it'll evolve even more, and maybe we'll see even more interesting archetypes do well. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video here. I will leave a link to Play.Limitless down in the description below. If you want to play in an online tourney yourself, maybe you can be in one of these videos one day if you get top 8 with a cool deck. You never know, anything can happen. But yeah, there you have it. Hope you all enjoyed, and yeah, I'll see you on another video. Bye-bye.